And the final part of our jersey tier list for PGS 4, Group C. Get underway with Twisted Minds. Now, a lot of people were quite disappointed with Twisted Minds' global partner team skins in-game last year. They weren't quite as overtly out there or wild as some of the others, like the Gen G skins in particular. But I thought that they had a style that was almost something that you could physically wear in the outside world. It's almost like the blazer with like the subtle patterning down the arms and the sleeves and the stripe down the side of the leg. Maybe minus the pink surgery gloves, but all in all, I think they actually had a design that would look very, very good on a physical item of clothing. And I can see that they've used a similar sort of line of thinking to design these jerseys as well. Obviously the branding colors of the pink coming through as well, but they've used the version of the logo with the text on the outside in a sort of blue, very similar to what they had on the skins in game last year. And the pink and blue works well together on this design as well. Almost gives the impression of maybe like a heartbeat sensor or like radio waves, perhaps in some way giving a nod to kind of the stress of one of these events or maybe the communication between the team. But I think again on the front, the lack of sponsors just giving space for the pattern just to almost speak for itself and then keeping the sponsors onto the sleeves, it makes way for a pattern that is a little bit more eye-catching because it's not sort of getting tripped over by different colors of logos or different shapes that don't really fit with the overall design. And on top of all of that, I just have to say it's unique. It doesn't really fit with the stock standard. The only thing that maybe does is having the logo on the left side of the chest, having the back of the collars with the stripes around it. But beyond that, it's certainly an eye-catching piece that is nothing like any of the other teams have. I'd say for that reason, it makes a very strong fashion statement. Now then, Na'Vi. So with Twisted Minds, I discussed their in-game skins a little bit from last year, and I suppose we'll have to do the same for Na'Vi as well with their PGC 2022 championship set. I think there's very few things that can really bring together the entire PUBG community. Very few sort of sentiments that everyone will agree on. But the one thing that everyone sort of across the board agreed on was that those Na'Vi skins in game were absolute dog shit. Gave a real graphic design is my passion kind of energy. I think it's probably sad to say that it might be the case that that designer still works there. I don't hate the fact that they want to add a splash of color onto what might otherwise be just a pretty standard black, white, and yellow kit. And I think just the way that it's done and the shades of the colors and the geometry and the shapes, oh man, it's a little bit of an eyesore. I think if they tried to do something a little bit more standard with the jersey and kept that stripe down the side of the trousers, it could work quite well. Maybe if they took just one or two of the elements of color that they have on the jersey and kept those, but just discarded all the rest. But it's like it's trying to do 30 things at once to make itself interesting. And on top of that, all of them are wearing yellow shoelaces too. So there's just nowhere that you can look where your eyes aren't being constantly assaulted by just bright colors. It just doesn't work, man. It really does not work. Yeah, I think Na'Vi has kind of set the expectation for themselves to be designing this kind of thing. Whoever designed them is still blind. Shit, Ming Ming's huge. Okay, New Happy. My eyes are safe. They will survive another day. Because while New Happy is vaguely similar in the fact that they're using a black background, a little bit of a hint of color, and some colorful elements down towards the bottom, they haven't gone completely overboard. They've kept it quite subtle, quite limited, one or two bits of red or white down the side and almost the spike that comes up from the bottom left. This one I think actually does look like it's intended to be like a heartbeat sensor across the center of it as well, which is interesting. But it does come up with those jagged points that sort of calls back to the bull horns in the logo. And they've managed to find themselves a sponsor that either allows them to use their logo in the colors that they want or just has a logo that is that color anyway. So the logo really doesn't look out of place as opposed to the way that it did on a team like 4 Angry Men. Another little bit of the flexing coming through with the 5 stars, one being bigger to represent the international title. But all in all, just the black, the white, the red works together. It's quite a simple color scheme. They've got a little bit of things to keep it interesting, but without going too far overboard one way or the other. Yeah, I'd say overall this one, you'd probably be happy to wear this one. 17 Gaming. This might actually be the first of all of these teams to not have their logo displayed prominently on the chest. They have a sponsor logo on the right, the Chinese flag on the left, And while the logo is included, it's in a subtle negative space kind of way against the gold backdrop lower down the piece. I actually quite like that. It's a little more innovative. It goes against the grain. It's a little bit less stock standard compared to some of the others that we've seen. But I just still don't understand why for so many Chinese teams, they feel the need to spell out the number and then write the number as well. Feels like we're looking at a jersey for 1717 gaming. They really wanted to use that font and that text style, then they could have done something else. Maybe the player names or a sponsor, something like that. I think probably the best thing to do would just be get rid of the text altogether, or at least have it just so it says the 17 gaming, the number version, and then keep the gold free. But the black and gold does work very well. It's a very classic sort of elegant championship looking color scheme. I like the sort of jewel collar where it comes down and then goes into gold into the V-neck. And yeah, it feels a little sort of understated, a little subtle, but definitely still brings some of that, some of the prestige that you would expect of a team of this caliber. Honestly, get rid of the word 17 and this might go up a tier or two, but for now it's decent. Okay then, FaZe Clan. Now, FaZe Clan is one of many teams to have a black, white, and red color scheme. And I also think that this design has a lot in common with Bleed Esports that we looked at all the way back in Group A. But the big difference is that here it's just executed so much better. FaZe logo has a lot of that sort of pointed geometry in towards it, so it doesn't look quite so out of place as if they've just copy and pasted some graphics that they found on Tumblr or something. Inclusion of the sort of slight gradients in across the red as well, just to add an extra layer of depth onto it. The way that the shattered pieces of red surround the text and the logos, it all sort of comes together as one complete piece, as opposed to Bleed where it was just a little bit like thrown out there. The inclusion of the individual player flags as well on the sleeve as opposed to on the chest is nice. Gives a little bit of sort of individual personalization, but doesn't make that the focus of the piece, so it still feels like a team. And I also do like the cute little ghost that they've got on the logo too. This one, yeah, I'd say you'd be happy to wear this one. Okay, Gen G. Now, Gen G is the team that originally came through with the sort of white and gold and the black and gold color schemes. And there's so many ways that you can make that look good. So what's impressive about this one is the way that Gen G has managed to find a way to make those same color schemes look a bit ass. Gold is a difficult color to deal with in block colors because it's kind of like an orangey, like brownish yellow, but with a little bit of like lightness into it. So when you take out that lightness and desaturate it, you're just left with like mud. When they try and make a logo using that same color scheme with that same sort of principle, it doesn't read as gold anymore. It reads as a sort of like tarnished brass or copper at best if you're still thinking metallics. I think the design of it is a little all over the place. I don't mind what they've tried to do with the team logo, making it smaller and up towards the collar. I think that's fine if they want to go away from the norm on the way they display that, but then the rest of it is still kind of normal. You have the Puma logo over on the right hand side and then the massive Gen G lettering, just like curvature onto that as well, which again goes against the Gen G branding, which is all about very angular lines and very straight. I think this picture actually demonstrates thanks to Barpo for wearing a slightly different variation where the color is different. I've got to say I much prefer the kind of redder tones, despite the fact that obviously Gen G doesn't really use red in any of their branding. I think the color waves that they have on that version of the jersey is so much better than the one that makes an attempt to be gold but kind of isn't. But I think in terms of rating, we're going to be rating the standard gold version, yeah, purely just on the shade of color alone. Whoever made this has to be blind. Virtus Pro now, and another comeback to the PUBG scene that had a very short turnaround to get these things printed and designed. Probably the other way around. But they've made that massive callback to Twitch chat with having Kappa all the way down the side of it. Standard white color scheme, standard white layout, but I do like the fact that instead of having a sponsor across the middle, it has the player names. Slightly unfortunate about having the yellow logo at the top, but what can you do about it? Don't think it takes away too much from the overall piece, but really the design of the orange almost network across the background, geometric shapes. Yeah, it is nice. I like it. It's quite good. Looking at a different photo of it, it does raise the question, why have they bothered putting a smaller version of the player name above the massive part across the chest that has the bigger version of the player name? Not sure as to why they made that choice. But they've done a very good job at making sure that since the logo predominantly features the polar bear, which is all white, they've made choices that make sense with that as the logo and the branding to have all white with hints of orange across. and then just keeping the subtle pieces of the darker black color to just lay the outlines around the collar and the sleeves. So all in all, this one, it's, yeah, I like this one. I'd be happy to wear this. And the final team for the PGS4 jerseys tier list is Falcons. Solid green color scheme gives them a couple of options, but of course this is an esports jersey, so the option that we're going with is starting with a black background and just adding little subtle hints of the branding colors all across the piece. I do like the vertical stripes as opposed to going for crazy random geometric patterns. Keeps that sense of sort of order and cleanliness about it. Of course, the trimming around the sleeve, but not around the collar. If we take a closer look at the patterning within the shirt itself, you can see that those stripes are not just a solid block of color, but they are actually a pattern in and of themselves. And down the center, a more subtle pattern, which is a slightly lighter version of the dark background color, which gives an image that's perhaps reminiscent of maybe like a Persian rug or some sort of callback to the organization's Middle Eastern heritage. I think black and green is a color scheme that works extremely well, and it's not something that many esports teams can actually go for, given the fact that green is just not really a prevalent color. So they could really have come out and just gone for an all green kit, but I think what they've done here to keep it subtle, keep it sort of understated, but still making some strong callbacks to the team and the organization itself as well. Yeah, I really, really like this jersey. I think it looks good from a distance. When you get up close, you get to really appreciate some of the artistry and the patterns that are going on. Yeah, this one is it's a little bit of a statement piece. And that's it. That's all of the jerseys now rated for PGS 3 and 4. We might have to do this again if any of these teams bring out new versions of jerseys in the future. But again, just like last time, if you disagree with any of my takes, you want to let me know in the comments that I probably should have put them somewhere else, don't.